Before we get going into your Hockey IQ podcast episode, I want to thank our sponsor, Rapid Shot. Rapid Shot is the smart shooting lane. It's like a batting cage for hockey players. Very cool. Tracks your shot in three ways: accuracy, shot speed, and reaction time. Easy to use. Actually, I used it when I played and was growing up. Very easy. Simply scan your phone in, select your settings, and start shooting. You can see your stats on the app and online. You can check them out at rapidshot.com. Great small business. I actually grew up with one of the owner's sons and have played with all the family members by now, just in local pickups here in Ohio. Very cool local business. Awesome product. I love it. I know quite a few NHLers have them in their homes. A lot of D1 programs have it at their rinks. So you have to check this out. Rapidshot.com. Check it out. Rapid Shot, thank you so much for sponsoring our podcast.
On the Hockey IQ podcast today, we bring on Rob Gherson. Looks like Gherson, but it's Gherson. Just to make sure I don't screw it up. Finally got one right. So, Rob, excited to have you on here. We've been Twitter friends for a bit. We've gone back and forth on the platform for everyone to see. Sometimes in the DM, we're talking goaltending, we're talking coaching. Excited to have you on. You've got a hugely busy life, fighting Toronto traffic, and then a secondary career of coaching some GTHL teams. And I believe you're director of one of those programs. So great to have you on. Looking forward to the conversation.
Hey, thanks for having me.
All right, let's get started. So we know the traffic's bad in Toronto, but once you're actually at the rink, what are you working on these days? What are your official roles?
So I run the goaltending program at Blythe Downsview Park. Which it's a school. Blythe Academy is a school across Canada. And then our specific location is at Scotia, like right in the parking lot of Scotiabank Pond, which is like the biggest rink in the city. And the kids come on the ice with us for an hour before practice, before school. And it's a development program. So we have currently the goalie program. We have 10 goalies. And I get to work with them every day, which is really cool. One of the things that I love about it is because I'm with the kids so much, we can really work on small details. We do puck handling once a week usually with each goalie, and that's something that most of the time we'll throw in puck handling maybe at the end of a practice or at the end of a private session or something. Like a lot of goalies don't get to really work on it other than shooting pucks in the backyard, because coaches don't really work on it in practice very much either. So we can get really detailed on that stuff at the school, and that's really fun. And you can see pretty quickly the development that the kids get. And then on top of that, I coach two teams in the GTHL. Coach a U14 team and a U17 team. And in previous years, not this year, kind of taking a year off, but I was with I was in Junior A in the OJHL. I was with North York for 7 years, I think 5 seasons because of COVID, and 1 year with the Toronto Patriots last year.
Got it. All right. So let's start and go all the way back to the beginning of kind of your career. How did you go about developing yourself, your career? Obviously, there's so many different components to goaltending. Everyone knows about the physical. We want our big goalies. Then you got your actual technique and skills and talent. And then everyone forgets about the emotional part, the spiritual, whatever you want to call it, the inner game of the goaltender. So I'm just curious about how you went about doing that, because you played at a really high level, won a Calder Cup of the AHL with the Wolves. That's a cutthroat program they have over there. So you're either performing or you're getting the boot, and you were able to stick around for a few years. So clearly you're doing something right.
Yeah. So I grew up in Toronto. I played the GTHL. I was very one of the top goalies in my age group. Pretty much my whole career in the GTHL. And after the GTHL, I played 1 year in the OJHL as a 16-year-old. We had a really, really I think the youngest team in the history of that league. There were, I don't know, I think sketchy underage rules back then. I don't know what the rules were, but we had 8 underagers on our team. and I think we had like 12 rookies. So it was a really, really young team. But we were good. We finished in second. We lost in the division finals. It was a really, really, really good experience for me. I had a coach. It was one of the first times I had a coach that he actually understood goaltending, and helped me in a certain way. Like it was not really like a situation where it was really giving me much goaltending feedback, but like I remember there was one game where I wasn't playing my best. And he came up to me in between periods, was like, "You're not leaving the net. You're finishing this game, so find a way." And like I never really had a coach who ever said anything to me. It was like the goalie's life is usually you don't say anything. Coaches don't really talk to you unless they're telling you had a bad game. And all of a sudden, I have a coach who he played in the OHL as a goalie. So I knew that he understood it, but also just like understood what I needed to hear in that moment. So that was a really, really fun year because we had so many young guys. We had a really close team.
That's an amazing moment too. Like I hate when coaches like, okay, there's an automatic rule. If you get scored on, you leave the ice. Like you have a guy out there for literally 1 second as he just touched the ice and he's already off, or like you've got to build that resiliency and just that confidence. Like, okay, even if I'm not having it, I got to just find a way. Like, I love that moment. That was awesome.
Yeah, for sure. Like I always find it funny. Like with the junior teams that I was with, I wasn't always there full time. Like I was there most of the games, but there were times where I didn't go on the road, or I had something else, so I couldn't go. And it was always much more often that the goalie got pulled in those games. Whereas usually we'd have, if a goalie let in a couple goals early, the head coach would come over and talk to me, and we would have a conversation. And I would always err on the side of let's give him a chance, let's see what he can do, because early in the season, especially, like those games didn't really matter. We had teams that were good. We knew we were going to make playoffs. Is more about like let's let him fight through this, because I want to see how he can fight, because in playoffs we're going to need him to fight. And if he knows he let us in a few goals and like his night's over, then that's not helping anybody. The same with players, right? If you're sometimes I think a guy makes a big mistake and wants to get off the ice. So like to keep them on the ice, I think is a harder thing as a coach. But like if you can afford the time to do that, it's not going to kill your team. Like you find your players get a lot more resilient.
Yeah, absolutely massive. So, all right, sorry to interrupt the story.
Yeah. So after that, I played in Sarnia in the OHL. I went into a situation where we had a 19-year-old goalie when I got there who was the backup the year before, and essentially I went in with the understanding that if I played really well, I could earn the number one job. And I think we were both told at the beginning of the season that it was going to be 50-50. And I think 3 games into the season, I got an extra start and the other guy quit. So they ended up bringing in another goalie who was drafted in my age group. But I think he was drafted in like the 18th round or something. And coaches didn't have a lot of faith in him. I think I played something like 27 games in a row. We traded for an overager at the trade deadline, and I played 1 game after that, and I started I think 47 games in my rookie year, having not playing any games for the last like 2 months of the season. So like I was kind of fed to the wolves right away on a team that was giving up 40-50 shots a night, which in one way was really good because I got to play all the time. I knew what was going into the what the situation would be going into the game. But then also like as a rookie goalie, not having support of another goalie, like knowing that if I don't play well, our team's not going to win, and that was kind of difficult, and that was a really important season for me because I had to learn how to deal with adversity. I had to deal with it was the first time I'd ever really failed in minor hockey, or like in my hockey career, and it took me quite a while to like figure out what my mental process needs to be in those situations. But I think because I failed, because I had to go and learn myself. Like we didn't have a sports psychologist. We had a goalie coach who was awesome, and he supported me a ton too. But like I literally like my mom and I went to the bookstore and went to like the mental like the sports section and found a bunch of books on like mental toughness and stuff. And I there was one specific one that I recommend all the time called Hockey Tough. I the name of the name of the writer is eluding me right now, but he was a sports psychologist. He was a sports psychologist, I think, for Dallas at the time. And it really broke down things into situations, and like this is the tool you use in this situation. And it really changed my life in just terms of now I had a process for when I was overthinking things or when I let in a goal that I want to have back. And that was really big for me going further in my career. And like after that, I feel like I became much better mentally and then much more consistent as a goalie. And so then I played. So I was in Sarnia for 3 years. We had a very good team my third year, and we ended up losing in the first round of playoffs to I think Guelph, who won, or I think it was Guelph who won it all. Ended up winning the whole league that year. And so we didn't go as far as we could have, but I think we had a really good team, and it was a kind of a turning point for the organization that season. And then the following year as an overager, I got traded to Owen Sound, and so I got to play. That year was like I got traded, and then the very first game that I played, Brad Richardson separated his shoulder and was out for the season. And then like a week later, Mark Giordano broke his wrist and played. I don't think he missed a game. He played the whole season with a cast on his wrist. But and then we had a really young Bobby Ryan as an underager on that team. We had a really good team that if we didn't have the injuries we had, I think we could have done some damage. But again, that was another season that like really propelled me going forward. Whereas like I got traded. I was traded for quite a lot. I've been an all-star this season before, and now I got sent down. I didn't sign a contract that I thought I was, and thought I was going to start my pro career, and ended up back in the OHL where I didn't really want to be, and that was another tough like mental season where I had to learn how to deal with like playing when you're not 100% like mentally in, because I was confused. It was like people don't really I think you see it a lot when guys get sent down, where like they're that first little while it's hard for them, and then they make peace with where they are and figure out they got to just find a way to play and perform so they can get back to the level they want to get to. And that was a difficult challenge, but it made me appreciate the game once I figured it out. It made me appreciate it. It made me realize like this is what I want to do. And so after that, I went into my first year pro was the lockout season. So I signed in Houston in the American Hockey League, and I ended up, and they sent me down to Quad City in the United Hockey League. So I was in the United League when in that year where I'm sure you've seen the Danbury Trashers documentary.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I got to, I was called up to Houston when we played in Danbury. So I didn't get to see that circus. But it was really cool that season. Like we had, it was a big, I played in Quad City, and it was a rebuilding year for Quad City. They had a ton of success, and they made the decision to kind of get rid of a bunch of the older guys and bring in new guys. So we kind of got to build our own little thing that year. And we ended up losing in the first round to Muskegon, who were the best team in the league. But we went to 7 games, and the second half of the season, we were like in 10th or 11th or something. Like we were like way out of a playoff spot going into the second half of the season, and we went on a really really good run and ended up clinching a playoff spot like a day before the last game of the season. But what was really cool in that season was guys like Chris Chelios were in the league and Darian Hatcher. There were a bunch of NHL guys that were in the league and like the guys that played for the Detroit team only played home games, so they'd have to like release a whole bunch of players when they came home, and then like sign them again when they went on the road. But it was really cool playing in Detroit against those guys. Like one of our guys fought Chris Chelios. I think we were the only team in the league to beat them at home with those guys in the lineup. I stopped who's like Brian Smolinski and Chelios on a 2-on-0, which was a pretty cool like bucket list thing.
Fighting Chelios seems like a bad decision.
His name was Dave Stewart, and he was so strong and tough. He was like from Nova Scotia. I think he's an assistant coach at St. FX University now. He fought another NHLer that year. Like it wasn't like he fought. He wasn't like not a fighter, but neither of them were fights that he was looking for. The one with Chelios, he went behind the net. Their goalie played the puck, and the goalie like stuck his leg out and fell. So Chelios was looking the other way. I saw his goalie lying down, and saw Stewie standing there, and it came over and fought him. And Stewie did really well. Like the Chelios, remember in the interview after, said he was one of the strongest guys he's ever fought. So that was pretty cool. There would be another guy in that game. I remember he like toe dragged Darian Hatcher and went in and scored. And he was from Detroit. And his name is Jason Deskins. He's one of the GMs, Johnstown now in the USHL. So Desi came in the room, like we were all pumped up that he just dangled Darian Hatcher. I think Darian Hatcher was like a finalist for the Norris Trophy the year before. And he dangled him and scored in his hometown in front of a bunch of his friends. And then the next period, he tried to do the same thing and just got crumpled.
Man, the old timers are gonna have a lot of fun with this episode. Gotta say, they're gonna all these names like Hash. Oh yeah, he couldn't really skate, but hey,
yeah, that was the thing that was like shocking when you saw him. We're like, this guy looks like Bambi out there. Like,
yeah,
he's playing 4 leagues down from where he's a dominant player, and he doesn't look especially impressive. But I mean, I guess just understand the game was very different back then too. So then after that, after my year in Quad City, I ended up started the year. I went to training camp in in New York, with the Rangers. And
yeah, we got to take some time on this because Benoit is kind of a legend in the goalie community. If you're not a goalie, you probably have no idea who he is. But if you are a goalie and you spent any time doing any research whatsoever, you're like, him, Korn, this guy used to be. Yeah, there's like the Mount Rushmore, like he's definitely on it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like, so I went to rookie camp with New York that year. Had a pretty good rookie camp, and they invited me to main camp. And I remember the first day in main camp, Benoit brought us all into the video room, all the goalies. And it was Lundqvist's rookie year as well. I think that the goalies they had there, I think it was Lundqvist, Kevin Weeks, and Al Montoya, and me, and then Chris Holt, who was at University of Nebraska Omaha. And so they brought us all into the video room, and it was Benoit's first year with New York. He'd been in Phoenix the year before, and so he showed us a video really quickly of Sean Burke and Nikolai Habibulin, and he basically just like showed us the way they're playing and explained his philosophy really, really quickly. And his philosophy is really just play really, really deep and stand your ground more often than not, play without moving too much. And so I was in a situation where I was kind of fighting for the 5th goalie in the organization contract. Oh, and Dan Blackburn was there. Dan Blackburn was wearing two blockers. It was after he'd had that shoulder thing. So he was trying to make a comeback because it was kind of between us for that fifth contract, that fifth goalie spot in the organization. And I was in a situation where I was like, well, if it's everything's equal, they're going to give it to Dan Blackburn. He was an 18-year-old playing in the NHL. He's a great goalie. So I kind of have nothing to lose. I'm just going to try this. And I had read there was a magazine back then called Goalies World Magazine, and it was like they did sort of similar to what In Goal Magazine does now, but it was a print version, and they would break down goalies' techniques. And there was I remember seeing a bunch about Sean Burke, and Sean Burke changing like really became a top starting goalie in the league after having been a backup for a little while and kind of had become sort of irrelevant a little bit. And then he was a starting goalie in Phoenix. I had really, really good numbers, and he started like the whole thing was he just started playing deeper in the net, and like something I tried to do in junior a little bit, but like I'm just guessing at what the principles are when I'm doing it. So I just like tried to do it, and it didn't work for me in junior because for a bunch of reasons. I don't think I knew exactly what I was supposed to do in every situation. I didn't really have a lot of guidance on it. And then also like in the OHL, your defensive structure is a lot different than what you have in the NHL and the AHL and pro. So Benoit himself said it doesn't really work as well at lower levels. And so it was like, anyway, I went out and I tried it. I just like, I have nothing to lose. I'm going to try it. And had maybe the best training camp I've ever had. I stood on my head. I think I let in like one or two goals the whole week. At the end of the training camp, they said I think they loved the way I played. They wanted to sign me to an AHL deal, and I decided because I had been on an AHL deal the year before and ended up staying in the United League the entire time. Pretty much, I didn't really get a chance in the AHL. So whereas I saw other guys getting called up that were on ECHL deals and ending up signing NHL deals out of it because they got those opportunities. So I ended up turning it down, going to Columbia in Columbia, South Carolina in the East Coast League. I think I played like 3 games. I got called up to Manitoba. I played 1 game for Manitoba on the road in San Antonio. That one was interesting. It was Mike Keane was the captain of that team, and it was his first game ever playing defense at like 40 something years old. We won. I let in 1 goal. Actually, Mike Keane apologized to me after the goal. He thought it was his fault. So that was kind of a cool moment. And then on my way back, when I went to Manitoba, I always knew it was 1 game, and then I was going to go back down. And in the airport on the way back down, I got a call from my agents saying, Hartford wants you. They want you to be there probably for the rest of the year if you do well. So I like literally went to Columbia. I think I had 1 practice there, and then everything got sorted out with Hartford, and I ended up in Hartford. And so it was me and Al Montoya for the rest of the season in Hartford. And that was a really cool experience because I got into a situation where like Monty is great. I love Monty. He's a really good goalie. I think he would say that he struggled that season. I think he got pulled a lot that season. I ended up having to go in a lot in that season. But being in a situation where like I was clearly it was obvious that I was going to get a chance to fight for the number 1 spot. Was really could give me a lot of confidence. And like when I got in there, Monty was hurt, and I think I played like 7 games, and I played the first 7 games right away. Had a really good we went on a nice long winning streak, and so I was there the rest of that season. I had some concussion issues at the end of the season, which kind of derailed my playoffs. But it was a really good it was a really good situation, really good organization, and an opportunity to play in the AHL. Yeah.
And he had Bieksa in front of you, so could have been worse.
No, he wasn't there. Sorry, this was in Hartford. I can't remember if Bieksa was in Manitoba when I was there. It was a whirlwind. I was just like my first AHL game. I knew who Mike Keane was, and try to just keep the puck out of the net and give him a chance. And then in Hartford we had really good players. We did Nigel Dawes was there, who, like, if he played in this era, I think he would have had a 15-year NHL career instead he had a 15-year KHL career. Um, uh, we had a pretty good young team as well that year.
Yeah. You had some good times. I would love to move to some players like that you played with. I know we talked about Danny Fritchie, so I'd love to talk about Danny Fritchie and what his backhand is for goalies, which is completely a nightmare.
Yeah, so Fritch was like he was I don't think he did it consciously. I don't know. I'm not sure. We never actually talked about it. But he used to, like, I was always very good at breakaways. In the AHL, I don't think I lost a shootout. I loved shootouts. I loved breakaways. And we do breakaways at the end of practice, and Fritch was so hard to stop because he almost always do the same move where he'd fake forehand and shoot backhand and and go upstairs backhand. And when most guys do that, they'll bring the puck like diagonally in front of them to their backhand, so they're moving the puck closer to the goalie as the goalie's sliding over to make the save, and it kind of becomes for the shooter really hard to get the puck up top over you. But Fritch would come in and I'd know what he was doing, and I knew he was going backhand. I'd play it perfectly, and he'd just roof it. And because he would when he would make that move, the puck would move just completely laterally, and that would open up like extra like foot of space up top because the goalie can't come out to the puck. Like, the only way to really stop it would be to come out to him, and if you do that, you're just going to give up even more space, like lower in the net. So he just had, I don't think he knew why it worked, but he knew it worked. And he was impossible to stop on breakaways.
All right. How about playing a 2-on-1? Like, with back pressure, without back pressure, like, how are you thinking through playing a 2-on-1?
So I'm almost always like, I don't really care that much about the back pressure. I mean, it's pretty rare that there's so little pressure that the second guy could just slow down and be the trailer in that situation. And that situation is really hard. But on most 2-on-1s, like, the way I like to play it, and this is something I got from Benoit, is I would start generally like toes at the top of the crease, and I want one side of the ice as a goalie. So the defenseman's job is cut off the middle of the ice as no passes get across early. So early in the 2-on-1, like between the blue line and the top of the circles, I want my defenseman almost right on the pass option, really completely taking away that early pass. And then as they get closer, cutting off the middle of the ice, so that shooter can't get across the middle of the ice. And then for a goalie, what this does is you stand your ground, toes at the top of the crease, like you want to start where you want to finish. And what this does to the shooter is, most goalies are going to come out, start in the white ice, and back up as a guy comes in, and you want that momentum. You kind of play it sort of like a breakaway. But for a shooter, when you see your goalie come out and back up, as they get closer to you, the net is at least staying the same size, but sometimes getting bigger if the goalie doesn't time it right. So you're seeing more net as you get closer, which for a shooter gives you confidence to shoot. If you start deeper in the net and stand your ground, what happens to the shooter is the net's getting smaller. So whereas maybe they see more net as it's at the blue line or the top of the circle, as they get closer, the net's getting smaller, and you're becoming bigger in front of the net. And what I found when I started doing that is guys end up forcing shots and overhandling pucks. And there's a lot of plays where pucks end up right in the goalie's chest, or guy overhandles it and tries to force a pass, or gets too close to the goalie, or shoots wide. Like, you see, I think my shooting, like a player's shooting percentage in terms of hitting the net, goes way down. And you see it in practice too. When you start working on it with goalies, and they play a little deeper, you just hear pucks hitting the glass all the time because it makes shooters overthink. And then the goalie's job at that point is just stay centered and go straight down if they shoot. And Connor Hellbuck does a really good job of that. I have a ton of clips of him where he just doesn't even move, and like the shooter will stick handle. Good shooters will like stick handle 15 times and just like fall into him almost. So it's one of those things that I love because it's really effective, but also as a goalie, like there are those moments where you just broken the shooter's brain, and those are really fun. Like there's a little bit of like the sadistic side of being a goalie where you just like, I owned that guy so bad he just didn't know he couldn't even figure out what he was going to do.
I would say as a shooter or an attacker, like I love to make the early pass because I think it just throws off the timing of the defenseman and the goalie. So, if you can get your D to take away the early pass, I think that's critical. And then I find a lot of times you tell the D to like, don't let the pass through, let the goalie get the shooter. They like basically let over a breakaway.
Yeah.
Like you have the coach that you have to coach like, okay, you can't like sit on that player 100%. Maybe it's got to be like a 70% sit on the passer because exactly what you said. Like you can't let the shooter get the middle, and depending on the level or that player that's attacking with the puck, like maybe they'll just skate themselves down to the corner or they end up like on the goal line by the time they make the shot. But like for the most part, you get to higher levels, like you can't just let up a breakaway and just take away a complete pass. So I like that there's like it's almost like you're starting really far over on the passer, and then you're kind of like slowly shading towards middle where you're still sitting on the pass because that's really going to screw the goalie, but you're still not giving just 100% breakaway because that's just awful.
Yeah, for sure. Like the thing what's his name? Valquette's company, the Royal Road stuff, like shooting percentage goes up a ton on passes on plays that come across the middle of the ice. If you got a goalie moving, you have a much better opportunity to score. And if your defenseman plays it properly and the goalie only has to stay on one side of the ice, it makes it so much easier, and it makes it easier for the goalie to stand their ground too, because you know that guy's not getting across. You don't need the momentum to go back. It's not going to become a breakaway. So I found it where I've really found a big difference in my game is like I let in a lot fewer 5-hole goals because on those 2-on-1s, because like I knew I was standing my ground, my feet were set, and I just kind of had a butterfly preloaded. And like if the guy changed the angle, I'd shuffle a little bit and stay centered. But you're really just kind of just staying in front of him and butterflying. It simplifies everything. And that's the thing I think is like most effective with Benoit Allaire's philosophy is everything is simple. And when you simplify things, you become way more consistent.
Yeah, consistency is everything. Like, the more consistent you are, the more trust you can get, whether you're a goalie or skater, etc. So that's critical.
Yeah, and like as a coach now, like when I coach of teams, I'm like really I don't think about my goalies that often. I know I have good goalies, but I don't really think about my goalies that often. I don't want to think about my goalies that often. So like what I want is really consistent goalies. And like a lot of times with my teams, like I don't even know who's the starter that day. Like we just rotate, and like we did that with our junior team as well. Where like our goalies were both really good, so we could consider we trusted both of them, and we rotated pretty much straight. And that's a really good position to be in as a goalie coach, especially. Like you don't have to coach. The coaches generally trust you a lot more when you have good goalies. But knowing that whoever you put in every situation, they're going to perform because their game is consistent is huge. And then it gives coaches the like if you do have a number one and you have a backup and that backup's really consistent, it gives you a lot of confidence to put that backup in if the starter's struggling or if there's an injury or whatever.
Yeah, big time. And that dovetails perfectly where we want to go next, which is coaching. Like you've got two teams, so kind of what's your philosophy? We talked about before we recorded here. about some important things that I think we need to touch on, which is rolling lines, similar to, you know, having confidence in your goalies too, not having a set power play till the second half of the year. Like we can go for an hour on this, but we'll try to keep it short. But, what is your philosophy coaching wise? I think there's a lot of important things that people can pull from that.
Yeah, I mean, I think if I had to come up with like one thing that's I think is really important, especially I coach pretty young kids. They're developing. I want them to make a ton of mistakes. I don't hammer them on mistakes. I encourage mistakes because I want players that are resilient. If a kid makes a mistake and you're pulling them off the ice right away, and then they don't see another shift for 10 minutes, that's going to make them a lot more cautious. And I hate cautious hockey, especially with kids. Like we play against teams that are like dumping and chasing and trapping and icing every puck, and like it may help you win a few games, but like I don't understand why people care so much about wins at U14 when what you should be doing is giving the kids opportunities to show what they can do and learn what they can and can't do by making mistakes. I read a thing in a book a while ago about people who didn't have pain receptors, and their lives are really, really short because they don't learn from mistakes. So they don't have that pain when they'll end up getting like bed sores and stuff because they'll stand sit in the same position for way too long, and they'll have infections. And I think it's the same thing in like developing as a player. You need to face a little bit of adversity. You need to be able to make mistakes and learn from those mistakes. And then in terms of like our playing style, I play maybe I think stupidly aggressive sometimes. Like we've started activating our defensemen, and every time we have the puck in the offensive zone, we try to be like 4 guys up and 1 guy back. And same thing, like I don't like when my defensemen are just standing still on the blue line. I don't like rim the puck around the boards, breakouts, because I don't think it teaches the kids anything. I want my players to find plays and make plays. Like the thing we talk to them the most about is making plays. Like moving your feet and make plays. Move your feet and make plays. Like we say that 1,400 times a game, and we've had some success because of it in terms of we've won quite a lot, but also just you see a huge difference in our players from the beginning of the season to the end of the season, because you're telling them to make plays, you're telling them to find solutions to problems instead of aborting all the time.
Forcing them to find solutions. I find that to be a critical thing at the younger ages, particularly in that 12 to 15 age range. Those encouragements early pay massive dividends later, where they're making we'll put in quotation advanced plays, when really it's just they're not settling for less, right? Exactly. They're holding to higher standards of like, rimmed breakouts are lazy.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
How else can we make it easier? How can we find solutions? And they're able to handle that when they go up the levels, up the ages, where those are going to be very critical elements as the time and space continues to shrink.
Yeah, and like those safe, the quote unquote safe plays, like rim the puck around the boards or dump the puck in, like they may not end up in a goal every time when you turn the puck over, but you're doing it. If you're doing it all game, it's really easy. Like we have a kind of a running joke we had with our junior team too, where we come in the dressing room before the game and ask the players what the other team were going to do on their breakout, and they would just always like rim the puck, like, and instead of like what we wanted to do was we want our defenseman finding the center in the middle of the ice, and we've made it that it's the center's responsibility to have the puck, to get the puck. So if the defenseman throw a pizza up the middle and it gets picked off, it's the center's fault. It's not the defenseman's fault. We're telling the defenseman to do it. So even with our junior team too, it became our guys got so good at it that they could just do it blindly. They could just close their eyes, pass the puck on their backhand through the middle of the ice, and our centers would be there. And you're like, by breaking out at the middle, you have so much more, as you have so many more options. And then you have the puck in the middle of the ice, which is where you want to have the puck. It's really hard to defend against that, especially like compared to when you rim the puck around the boards and that winger gets a puck, that F3 can just come down on them and clobber them, or the defenseman just come down on them, clobber them, and they can only go one direction, or they can chip it past them, and then you're losing possession. So like just and also like kids have been taught their whole lives, don't pass the puck up the middle. Like every coach's corner session ever was Don Cherry saying, "Look, kids, don't throw the puck up the middle," and that's like becomes ingrained in their head. You have coaches and parents who are like, "Oh my God, they're passing the puck up the middle." I remember the first time I brought it, I like brought it up with one of my teams. I had like 5 emails from parents who were like, "Oh, you can't pass the puck up the middle." We're like, okay, watch an NHL game.
Oh, it's amazing. You watch, like, I remember watching the World Juniors up in Buffalo one year. And I was like, I think every breakout's been through the middle from Canada. Like, it just find a triangle or
Yeah.
like fake up the wall and then no look to the middle, like every single time. It was unbelievable. Every breakout, middle. You
Yeah.
only went up the wall unless you absolutely had to.
Yeah. And if you put we found with the junior team that if you put the onus on the centerman to be there, it encourages your defenseman to make that pass. Because if you're telling a defenseman make that pass up the middle, they've been told their whole lives not to do it. It doesn't work, and then you come down on them or they get in trouble. They're not going to do it again. They're just going to start rimming puck up the wall. And so like if they're the most important part in that equation of like they have to make that pass. They have to do what their parents have told them not to do, what everybody's told them not to do their whole lives. And so you have to give them the confidence that if this doesn't work, it's on the center and it's on me. It's not on you. You just go out and keep doing it because it's going to work 95% of the time.
And you're really just making the center actually have good defensive positioning on the breakout or like good support positioning. Because if you watch any low amateur hockey or even high level amateur hockey, like that center is almost always abandoning a good spot. Like there's no one pulling the Patrice Bergeron low and slow, perfectly support for wingers, defense, all that.
Yeah,
it's unbelievable.
And then if they like when they come low and slow, now they have runway before they get to the defenseman or before they get to their F3. Whereas if they're high in the zone, like above the top of the circles, as soon as they get the puck, they don't have time. They're gonna get clobbered, or they're gonna have to make a panic play, which like that's then we're just kind of throwing the puck out of the zone, and it's the same thing as going up the wall.
Yeah. The last thing I really want to touch on is just rolling the lines, especially in the first half of the season, not having set power plays. Dive into that a little bit for us.
So like what I always say to especially parents, like the kids I think understand it more than the parents do. But what I always say is like my goal at the end of the season is I want us to be able to completely roll lines and me not even have to worry about who's going on next. But it's not always realistic. Equal ice time I don't think is fair. But fair because they're kids that are better in certain situations, and if you need a goal, you should have certain guys out in those situations. But early in the season, for most of the season, really, what I try to do is roll lines as much as possible, put everybody in every situation, so that you could see how they'll respond in that situation, so that they have experience in that situation. Anytime I've been on teams where you rely on one line, you're really walking a tightrope. If that line gets hurt or disappears at certain points in the season, you haven't empowered your other players to play in situations where they might need to play, and they don't know what they're going to do in those situations, so they don't have that experience to fall back on, and your team I think becomes a lot thinner. On top of that, like when you're relying on, if you get down a couple goals in a game and you're relying on one line to score you goals, like if you're a junior, you have 25% of the time you have an opportunity to score instead of 75% of the time, because everybody can play in every situation.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to the point of like role is really relative. Like the role on one team may be completely different on another team. And especially at these younger ages, like you don't know what their situation is going to be at the next level or the
Yeah,
next team or even the next season. Like guys can grow so much in those off seasons at the youngest ages. Like you'd have no idea, or they could be going in as a young guy on an old team, or maybe the best young guy on a very young team. Like there's so many situations that they may be walking into. So like you don't want to pigeonhole them or not give them the experience to not prepare them. Like that's the job, right? Is always to prepare the person for the next level of player, the next
yeah,
season, and
yeah.
then continuously give them the tools and experiences. So not pigeonholing them and allowing them to play a little bit, even though it might irk you as a coach a little bit. You're like, I know someone else can do it better today.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like Cito Gaston, the old Blue Jays manager, used to talk all the time about like maybe we lose a game now to win 2 games later in the season. Um, and I think that like that's really stuck with me. I think that's especially in minor hockey where wins and losses really don't matter. Um, you you can learn more about the players. You can put your players in different situations where like if you're in minor hockey, like you want to be preparing these guys, like you said, for the next level. Um, maybe your best scorer isn't going to be a scorer at the next level. They need to be able to play every part of the game. And if you're only putting them on in offensive situations, or you're only praising them for what their offense brings them, and you're not showing them how to play defense, then you're doing a disservice to them. And we see that all the time with the junior team, where like rookie camp, you have guys that are so skilled, but their hockey IQ is just not there, because they haven't been told this. I see this a lot in minor hockey, where like there's a couple kids that are really good, and they're the ones that are scoring all the goals and making the coach look good, and they don't get coached very much because in the GTHL especially, coaches are scared to like discipline kids or tell them certain things because the kid can go to another team next year, and now you don't have your best player, and now your team's in seventh instead of in second, and your job is on the line. So it's like putting your kid, really like having the courage to coach your players and putting them in all different situations makes a huge difference at the end of the season, I think. And just going forward, where like when you have guys who can move up, you're putting them in a situation where they have all the tools to play at that level when they do move up.
Yeah, or even different positions. Like I know, it might be a little radical for some people, but like Rasmus Dahlin did not become a full-time defenseman until his draft year. Like he played all of different positions, and I'm pretty sure we look at him today and we're like, oh yeah, he's definitely got some forward in him, and that was
Yeah,
what makes him such a great player, making what $11 million a year or whatever it is.
yeah. I
So
was I was talking about that last night with my assistant coach, who's a kid that he was a forward. He was one of the best forwards of the league, and I made him a defenseman because I thought he would be even better as a defenseman, and we needed it. What almost every single season of my coaching career, like I've been doing this for I think 12 years now, 13 years. Uh, I put a forward on D, and they're always one of my favorite players because they now maybe they as a forward they were successful, but they didn't always have enough time to read the play and make the right play. But as defensemen, forwards generally have better puck skills because they focus more on that in practice. So now, if you're putting them as a defenseman, they're able to be almost as like they could become a star overnight on your team because they know how to make plays, and now they have a little bit more time to read the play. Um, and it's almost like as a forward, they were playing with a donut on their bat and taking swings with a heavier bat, and now it's a little bit lighter. The load's a little bit lighter, and they can see those plays, and a lot of them become kind of one man breakouts where they can start up the puck behind the net, and we know the puck's going to get out of the zone, and we're going to have possession of the puck.
yeah, and then same on the opposite side. Like there's a lot of lessons that we learned from D going up. So I love messing around with different positions and what benefits can bring to players, because it's all of our situations in hockey are transferable in some capacity. Ones allow more access to skills and situations. So I love that. Last thing I want to do before we end this here is just talk about kids who are smart can really make big jumps. So maybe this is the perfect plug for the listen to more of the podcast and definitely sign up for the newsletter. But like you're mentioning earlier how you had a player who was smart and it was the last player to make the team, but he ended up being a huge impact player for you, even though he may not have had some of the better skills.
Yeah. So I think intelligence, hockey intelligence, is the hardest thing to see as a scout when you're scouting, and it's you really need to kind of live with a player for a long time and see them consistently. So we had a player with my U14 team, as he was their U13 team last year, who in Toronto, tryouts are in April. Pretty much every team is fully is completely full before those tryouts, so the tryouts really don't mean anything. There's a lot of undercover tampering that goes on. But we had a kid that he didn't come to any of those tryouts. I think he was trying it with another team, didn't make it, and ended up coming to our training camp in August. And he was like fine. He was a little bit of a rough skater, but he was fine. Like when I took him, I was like, okay, I think he's gonna be. I never want to have a kid that can't play at the level, because, like I said, I want to be able to roll my lines. So I was fairly confident. I say I was 75% confident that this kid would be able to play at the level and not be somebody we'd have to hide. So and then as I got to see him play in more games, just like kind of blown away with his hockey IQ. And he became, I think he was probably he had at one point he scored like 15 goals, and I don't think any of them were from above the crease. Like he knew where to go. He would find ways to go to the net, and like we call him like those are Cheeto goals. His nickname is Cheeto. And like last night we had a game and we had a 3-on-1, and he tried to pass the puck off the backboards to the guy on the far side because that was the only angle that he had. Like his hockey IQ is just off the charts, and he became, like I said, he became one of our top players. And it's all IQ. He doesn't have a great shot. He's not the best skater in the world, but if he can develop those things, I think he's a kid that could really play at a high level because he's so smart. And those are the kids you love to have as a coach, because they're gonna, like we talked about earlier, they're gonna solve problems. Instead of just like, especially in minor hockey, you have kids who like have one skill where they have like maybe a really, really good shot, and they just use that, and that's the tool that they use all the time, and they have success at a young age, and then goalies get a little bit bigger and it doesn't work anymore. And because they had that, they just haven't developed enough of the other things. Whereas like if you have hockey IQ, that's a skill that really will scale up at every level.
All right. So Rob's recommendation is to listen to the Hockey IQ podcast and subscribe to the Hockey IQ newsletter, and suddenly you're going to have better opportunities. All right. We heard it here first. Rob, fantastic conversation. Really appreciate a lot of the stories early and a lot of the expertise late. I think this is great for any listener to dive into. So thank you so much for taking the time, hopping on here for an hour. This was fantastic.
Thanks, Greg. This was great.
That concludes this week's episode. Thanks for joining us here at Hockey IQ. If you haven't already, take a quick moment to hit that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, and drop a review. If you want to be a great teammate, even recommend us to a friend. You can follow us at Hockey's Arsenal on Twitter and Instagram. Check out the website, hockeysarsenal.com, where you can subscribe to the weekly newsletter. You won't regret it. Catch your buttes here next week for a brand new episode.